Hi, this is Green Philosophy. Today I'm going to be sharing Ralph Waldo Emerson, The Significance of British West Indian Emancipation from 1844. Emerson always hated slavery, but the early aversion to institutionalized reform that he voices in Self-Reliance, 1841, made him a tardy convert to anti-slavery activism. This is his first strong public statement on the subject, delivered in Concord at a meeting attended by Frederick Douglass, as well as various white abolitionist notables, on the 10th anniversary of British abolition of slavery in the West Indies, August 1st, 1834, the date that the African American community was already celebrating as Black Independence Day. The abolitionist establishment Emerson had previously satirized, he now began to embrace. His extensive reading in the long history of British imperial slavery and emancipation efforts aroused as never before Emerson's moral outrage at the abuses of the system and his admiration for the reformers. Although he himself did not become a consistent anti-slavery activist until after 1850, from this point on, American abolitionists counted him as one of their own. Printed below is the culminating portion of the address in which Emerson eloquently, if somewhat paradoxically, praises first, quote, the first civilization of the Negro, end quote, and, quote, the genius of the Saxon race friendly to liberty, end quote. This event was a moral revolution. The history of it is before you. Here was no prodigy, no fabulous hero, no Trojan horse, no bloody war, but all was achieved by plain means of plain men, working not under a leader, but under a sentiment. Other revolutions have been the insurrection of the oppressed. This was the repentance of the tyrant. It was the masters revolting from their mastery. The slaveholder said, I will not hold slaves. The end was noble and the means were pure. Hence, the elevation and pathos of this chapter of history, the lives of the advocates, are pages of greatness. And the connection of the eminent senators within this question constitutes the immortalizing moments of these men's lives. The bare enunciation of the theses at which the lawyers and legislators arrived gives a glow to the heart of the reader. Lord Chancellor Northington is the author of the famous sentence, as soon as any man puts his foot on English ground, he becomes free. I was a slave, said the Council of Somerset, speaking for his client, for I was in America, I am now in a country where the common rights of mankind are known and regarded. Granville Sharp filled the ear of the judges with the sound principles that had from time to time been affirmed by the legal authorities. Derived power cannot be superior to the power from which it is derived. The reasonableness of the law is the soul of the law. It is better to suffer every evil than to consent to any. Out it would come, the God's truth, out it came, like a bolt from a cloud. From all the mumbling of the lawyers, one feels very sensibly in all the history that a great heart and soul are behind there, superior to any man, and making use of each, in turn, and infinitely attractive to every person according to the degree of reason in his own mind, so that this cause has the power to draw to it every particle of talent and of worth in England from the beginning. I will say further that we are indebted mainly to this movement and to the continuers of it for the popular discussion of every point of practical ethics and a reference of every question to the absolute standard. It is notorious that the political, religious, and social schemes with which the minds of men are most occupied have been matured, or at least broached in the free and daring discussions of these assemblies. Men have become aware through emancipation and kindred events of the presence of powers which, in their days of darkness, they have overlooked. Virtuous men will not again rely on political agents. They have found out the deleterious effects of political association. Up to this day, we have allowed to statesmen a paramount social standing, and we bow low to them as to the great. We cannot extend this deference to them any longer. The secret cannot be kept that the seats of power are filled by underlings, ignorant, timid, and selfish, to a degree to destroy all claim, excepting that of compassion, to the society of the just and generous. What happened notoriously to an American ambassador in England that he found himself compelled to palter and to disguise the fact that he was a slave breeder happens to men of state. Their vocation is a presumption against them among well-meaning people. The superstition respecting power and office is going to the ground. The stream of human affairs flows its own way and is very little affected by the activity of legislators. What great masses of men wish done will be done, and they do not wish it for a freak, but because it is their state and natural end. There are now other energies than force, other than political, which no man in future can allow himself to disregard. There is direct conversation and influence. A man is to make himself felt by his proper force. The tendency of things runs steadily to this point, namely, to put every man on his merits and to give him so much power as he naturally exerts, no more, no less. Of course, the timid and base persons, all who are conscious of no worth in themselves, and who owe all their place to the opportunities that the old order of things allowed them to deceive and defraud men, shudder at the change, and would fain silence every honest voice and lock up every house where liberty and innovation can be pleaded for it. They would raise mobs, for fear is very cruel. But the strong and healthy yeomen and husbands of the land, the self-sustaining class of inventive and industrious men, fear no competition or superiority. Come what will, their faculty cannot be spared. The 1st of August marks the entrance of a new element into modern politics, namely the civilization of the Negro. A man is added to the human family. Not the least affecting part of this history of abolition is the annihilation of the old indecent nonsense about the nature of the Negro. In the case of the ship Zong in 1781, whose master had thrown 132 slaves alive into the sea to cheat the underwriters, the first jury gave a verdict in favor of the master and owners. They had a right to do what they had done. Lord Mansfield is reported to have said on the bench, "The matter left to the jury is, was it from necessity? For they had no doubt, though it shocks one very much, that the case of the slaves was the same as if horses had been thrown overboard. It was a very shocking case." But a more enlightened and humane opinion began to prevail. Mr. Clarkson, early in his career, made a collection of African productions and manufactures as specimens of the arts and culture of the Negro, comprising cloths and loom, weapons, polished stones and woods, leather, glass, dyes, ornaments, soap, pipe bowls, and trinkets. Then he showed to Mr. Pitt, who saw and handled them with extreme interest. On sight of these, says Clarkson, many sublime thoughts seemed to rush at once into his mind, some of which he expressed, and hence appeared to arise a project which was always dear to him of the civilization of Africa, a dream which forever elevates his fame. In 1791, Mr. Wilberforce announced to the House of Commons, "We have already gained one victory. We have obtained for these poor creatures the recognition of their human nature, which, for a time, was most shamefully denied them." It was the sarcasm of Montesquieu. It would not do to suppose that Negroes were men, lest it should turn out that whites were not, for the white has for ages done what he could to keep the Negro in the hoggish state. His laws have been furies. It now appears that the Negro race is more than any other susceptible of rapid civilization. The Emancipation is observed in the islands to have wrought for the Negro a benefit as sudden as when a thermometer is brought out of the shade into the sun. It has given him eyes and ears. If before he was taxed with such stupidity or such defective vision that he could not set a table square to the walls of an apartment, he is now the principal, if not only mechanic in the West Indies, and is, besides an architect, a physician, a lawyer, a magistrate, an editor, and a valued and increasing political power. The recent testimonies of Sturge, of Tom and Kimball, of Gurney, of Philippo, are very explicit on this point. The capacity and success of the colored and black population is employment of skill, of profit, and of trust. Best of all is the testimony to their moderation. They receive hints and advances from the whites that they will be gladly received as subscribers to the exchange. as members of this or that committee of trust. They hold back and say to each other that social position is not to be gained from pushing. I have said that this event interests us because it came mainly from the concession of the whites. I add that in part, it is the earning of the blacks. They won the pity and respect which they have received by their powers and native endowments. I think this a circumstance of the highest import. Their whole future is in it. Our planet, before the age of written history, had its races of savages, like the generations of sour paste, or the animalcules that wriggle and bite in a drop of putrid water. Who cares for these or for their wars? We do not wish a world of bugs or of birds, neither afterward of Scythians, Caribs, or Fijis. The grand style of nature, her great periods, is all we observe in them. Who cares for oppressing whites or oppressed blacks 20 centuries ago more than bad dreams? Eaters and food are in the harmony of natures, and there too is the germ forever protected, unfolding gigantic leaf after leaf, a newer flower, a richer fruit in every period. Yet its next product is never to be guessed. It will only save what is worth saving, and it saves not by compassion but by power. It appoints no police to guard the lion, but his teeth and claws, no fort or city for the bird, but his wings, no rescue for flies and mites, but their spawning numbers, which no ravages can overcome. It deals with men after the same manner. If they are rude and foolish, down they must go. When at last in a race, a new principle appears, an idea that conserves it. Ideas only save races. If the black man is feeble and not important to the existing races, not on a parity with the best race, the black man must serve and be exterminated. But if the black man carries in his bosom an indispensable element of a new and coming civilization, for the sake of that element, no wrong, nor strength, nor circumstance can hurt him. He will survive and play his part. So now, the arrival in the world of such men as Toussaint and the Haitian heroes, or the leaders of their race in Barbados and Jamaica, outweighs in good omen all the English and American humanity. The anti-slavery of the whole world is dust in the balance before this. It is a poor squeamishness and nervousness. The might and the right are here. Here is the anti-slave. Here is man. And if you have man, black or white, it is an insignificance. The intellect, that is miraculous. Who has it has the talisman. His skin and bones, though they were of color of night, are transparent, and the everlasting stars shine through with attractive beams. But a compassion for that which is not and cannot be useful or lovely is degrading and futile. All the songs and newspapers and money subscriptions of vituperation of such as do not think with us will avail nothing against a fact. I say to you, you must save yourself, black or white, man or woman, other help is none. I esteem the occasion of this jubilee to be the proud discovery that the black race can contend with the white. That is, in the great anthem which we call history, a piece of many parts, in vast compass, after playing a long time a very low and subdued accompaniment, they perceive the time arrived when they can strike in with effect, and take a master's part in the music. The civility of the world has reached that pitch, that their more moral genius is becoming indispensable, and the quality of this race is to be honored for itself. For this they have preserved in sandy deserts, in rice swamps, in kitchens and shoe shops, so long. Now let them stand emerge, clothed and in their own form. There remains the very elevated consideration which the subject opens, by which belongs to more abstract views than we are now taking. This namely, that the civility of no race can be perfect, whilst another race is degraded. It is a doctrine alike of the oldest and of the newest philosophy that man is one. You cannot injure any member without a sympathetic injury to all the members. America is not civil, whilst Africa is barbarous. These considerations seem to leave no choice for the action of the intellect and the conscience of the country. There have been moments in this, as well as in every piece of moral history, when there seemed room for the infusions of a skeptical philosophy, when it seemed doubtful whether brute force would not triumph in the eternal struggle. I doubt not that sometimes a despairing Negro, when jumping over the ship's sides to escape from the white devils who surrounded him, has believed that there was no vindication of right. It is horrible to think of, but it seems so. I doubt not that sometimes the Negro's friend, in the face of scornful and brutal hundreds of traders and drivers, he felt his heart sink. Especially, it seems to me, some degree of despondency is pardonable, while he observes the men of conscience and of intellect, his own natural allies and champions, those whose attention should be nailed to the grand objects of this cause, so hotly offended by whatever incidental petulances or infirmities of indiscreet defenders of the Negro, as to permit themselves to be ranged with the enemies of the human race, in names which should be the alarums of liberty and the watchwords of truth, are mixed up with the rotten rabble of selfishness and tyranny. I assure myself that this coldness and blindness will pass away. A single noble wind of sentiment will scatter them forever. I am sure that the good and wise elders, the ardent and generous youth, will not prevent what is incidental and exceptional to withdraw their devotion from the essential and permanent characters of the question. There have been moments, I said, when men might be forgiven, who doubted. Those moments are past. Seen in masses, it cannot be disputed. There is progress in human society. There is a blessed necessity by which the interest of men is always driving them to the right, and again, making all crime mean and ugly. The genius of the Saxon race, friendly to liberty, the enterprise, the very muscular vigor of this nation, are inconsistent with slavery. The intellect, with blazing eye, looking through history from the beginning onward, gazes on this blot and it disappears. The sentiment of right, once very low and indistinct, but ever more articulate, because it is the voice of the universe, pronounces freedom. The power that built this fabric of things affirms it in the heart, and in the history of the 1st of August, has made aside to the ages of his will.